Despite decades-long efforts of a whole Agile community through books, blogs, videos like this, conferences, meetups, we are still confronted in many Agile organizations with output metric-driven reporting systems. Management, directors of these Agile companies, believing that we need to protect the company at all costs from slacking workers, slacking employees, and the favorite method to do that is using a performance metric called velocity. Velocity. Don't get me wrong, velocity in the right hands of an experienced team is a beautiful metric. But in the hands of a manager, a command and control manager who doesn't understand what Agile or Scrum is, can become a tool for oppression. In this video, I'm gonna answer a few questions. What is velocity? How many companies misuse velocity? How you should be using it? The correct way to use velocity, and an antidote for management of your company who are obsessed with this velocity performance metric. You see many companies using Scrum spend a lot of time discussing velocity, always finding ways to increase it. It becomes a sort of magical, mystical number that Scrum teams are always chasing every single sprint. You get questions like, why is our current velocity of this sprint lower than the previous one? Can you provide a solid explanation? Why are we not meeting our commitments? Why are we not achieving all the story points in the sprint? Can you guarantee that this won't happen in the next sprint? Our velocity has stopped increasing. We should hire a new Scrum Master. What's the point of having a Scrum Master if they can't increase velocity in the team? Do you think that is a healthy environment? Do you think it's an environment where developers can be driven, can be motivated to research new ways, innovative ways, be creative, and work on valuable products? Or it's an environment that forces developers to always be chasing velocity, this mystical number, always try to quickly do something as fast as possible without even thinking about value. It's really hard for a developer to be driven, to be motivated, to be happy when they are treated like assembly line workers. But why? Why do companies do this? Well, it's simple. Developers, expensive, scarce resource. We need to get the biggest bang for the buck. We need to extract the maximum of value possible from these developers. Velocity is a measure of a team's historical capacity, not really a measure of how fast or how productive the team is. It should be used for planning purposes. Planning the next sprint, quarterly planning, release planning. Use velocity for planning, not to measure the productivity of a team. Because velocity changes. It changes. Many things can happen in a sprint with a team that can directly affect velocity. People can join the team, leave the team. People can go on leaves. People can fall sick. All these things affect velocity. Technical debt. Maybe we are working on a new technology, something totally new, very uncertain. It affects velocity. So many things can happen. Now, please pay attention for this part of the video. I need your full attention for at least the next minute. Many Scrum teams use story points when estimating the work. Story points, so many benefits compared to man hours. You can watch this video for more details. Let's take a simple example. Let's say in the sprint planning, the team thinks that they can complete 8 stories, 8 user stories, and they estimated these 8 user stories to 100 points. It's their first sprint, 100 points, and they complete the 100 points. And the next sprint, they take 100 points again, and they complete it again. And the following sprint, 100 points again, and they complete it again. What's the velocity of a team? 100 points. There's a high chance that in the next sprint, they will do around 100 points again. You see, velocity is a capacity planning tool. Capacity planning tool, not a productivity tool, how fast we are going to use it for capacity planning. We are now at sprint number 4, and managers, directors of a company, they are expecting that we do more than 100 points. We can't do 100 points forever. We need to keep doing more, always more points. But the problem is that story points, it's not only effort, it's effort, a combination of effort, risk, uncertainty, and complexity. It's quite complex to understand. Let's take a simple example. Let's say you need to develop something, simple basic application that queries your balance and allows you to transfer money to another account. Now, let's keep it very simple. The first part of the application, the query part of the application, estimated by the team, 5 story points. The second part of the application, transfer money, estimated by the team, 8 story points, simply because it's harder than the first query part of application. Now, 1 year later, the team has improved. Everything in the team improved, and they can do both this type of work in half the time. Would the estimation change? Both in half the time, the estimation might not even change simply because relative to each other. They didn't change, both reduced by half the time. If they can do the query part better, now, maybe the estimation will be way less than this one, the transfer part of things, but if they can do both better by half the time, the estimation might not even change. It all depends. You see how story points, estimating story points, velocity, all of these subjective. The team can easily trick the system. If they want to, they can inflate or deflate the story points. When estimating the work, they can easily do that and no one will know except for the team. And when you add a performance metric on velocity, on how fast the team is going, you force them to do that. You force them to trick the system. You force them to forget about value, about the software, about the product that they are building and focus on how fast we are going and focus on velocity. And when their focus is on velocity, they will always be finding ways to increase it, to fake it if they can't increase it. Yeah, even if they don't want to fake it, they will find ways subconsciously to fake it because their focus is how to increase velocity. That's the goal of Scrum. That's why we do Agile. No. The focus should be on the customer, on producing value, not faking velocity over team. As Goodhart's law puts it, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure. Velocity, beautiful metric. We always should strive to increase velocity. That's our goal. But our main goal, primary goal should be value. We shouldn't be attaching performance bonuses to increasing velocity. It should be natural. With this mindset of continuous improvement, of growth, velocity will gradually increase. If it doesn't, who cares? As long as we are providing value, as long as we are releasing, building this potentially shippable increment of a product every single sprint. Who cares about velocity? Only managers care. Only the directors care. They are obsessed with this metric. When a member of a Scrum team, a Scrum Master, an Agile coach, they ask me for advice on how to increase velocity. The number one thing that I always say, forget about increasing velocity. Be sustainable first. Sustainable pace first. Just imagine your laptop running at 100%. 100%. Every single day, 100%. Do you think that it's efficient? It's an effective way of running things? No, obviously not. You can't run at 100% always, and the team shouldn't be running at 100%. They should have a sustainable pace instead of going like this. Going up for a release, and then burning out, crashing down, not doing anything, and then going up again because we are late for the release. Goes on and on. No, sustainable pace. You should strive for that instead of always trying to increase velocity. Try to have a sustainable pace first. Sustainable pace, focus on that first instead of always finding ways to increase velocity. But even that sustainable pace can be abused by managers, directors. Yeah, they always find ways to abuse the system. They can put a performance metric on the sustainable pace. You won't get your bonus if you're not sustainable. If you don't go at a sustainable pace, what will the team do? Yeah, they will trick the system to always go at a sustainable pace. Even if they are doing overtime, they won't report that. No. I need to go at a sustainable pace. Another thing that managers are obsessed with is meeting the commitments of a sprint. If developers said they would complete 5 user stories in the sprint, you better complete these 5 user stories. If they said they would do 80 points, 80 story points in the sprint, you better complete these 80 story points, else the developers will be shamed or punished. Really? Go back to the Scrum Guide. Is it really a commitment? Are you committing on these user stories, on the story point, or are you committing on the sprint goal? Your only commitment for the team, sprint goal. Doesn't matter how many story points you do in the sprint, as long as the sprint goal is completed. Number one focus in the sprint. Sprint goal. Complete it first. Doesn't matter. All other things don't matter. So your only commitment for a sprint is completing the sprint goal. And the sprint goal should be attached to value. How can we maximize value for the customer? Not how to increase, not how to go faster. If a company is obsessed with velocity, it's a sign that they are obsessed with releasing more features. But more features doesn't always equate to more value, to maximizing the value for the customer. That should be your number one focus. Trust the developers. Trust the Scrum team. Trust that they are doing the best work. You don't need to put this urgency Urgency is already built in Scrum. Everything is time boxed in Scrum. Even the sprint is time boxed. We're always rushing to do things. There's always this urgency. Just trust that the system will work. Trust that the process will work. Don't micromanage them. Keep them self-managed, self-organized. Let them be empowered to make their decisions. And you can't really focus on value. You can't really meet the customer's expectation if you can't innovate. If you can take a step back and take time to reflect, find ways, new ways of doing things, be creative, and you can't do that if you're running always at 100%, always trying to increase velocity. No, value should be your number one focus. Again, no one cares about velocity. No one cares about story points if you're always focusing on completing the sprint goal. Number one thing, completing the sprint goal every single sprint. Building this potentially shippable increment of a product every single sprint. And you're continuously improving, growing. If you have these three things, no one cares on how many points you should be doing. No one cares about that except for managers and directors. But your role as a Scrum Master, as an Agile coach watching this, teach them. Coach them. Make them understand that we should focus on value. That's why we do Agile, not to go faster. No, to please the customer more. Which brings me to my next point. If you want more tips, insights on Agile, Scrum, personal growth, click on the video that stands out the most on the screen right now. And I'll see you in a few seconds.